everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. It's so nice to see such great stories to kick off the week, coming out of the weekend. Things are usually a little slow, so it's nice to see Hollywood hitting the ground running coming out of Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for gifting a membership, Danny, and that's right. It's the first live stream of the week, which means I too shall gift some memberships to match your incredible generosity in the community. So every first stream of the week, I always gift 5 memberships. There they go. Just to remind you, I don't pick, nobody picks who their memberships go to. You gift some memberships and YouTube gives them to whoever is the most involved with the channel. Be it you were a member before, you're a subscriber, you leave a lot of comments, you like the videos with the little thumbs up. So be sure to interact with this channel as much as you can if you're interested in getting one of those gifted memberships. Okay, so we have, as I said, 3 fantastic stories to go over today. Please, and there will be other videos going up this week as well. I'm seeing Karate Kid this evening, so my review for that will go up tomorrow. I'm not sure what time, but it'll go up by end of day. And the live streams today are planned for today, Wednesday, and Thursday. And so that's what we'll be doing. All right, so always try and keep your questions and comments to the story at hand. I might not interact with your questions and comments till the end of each story, but of course you'll be talking amongst yourselves as well. And then at the very end of the stream, as always, we'll do a short Ask Me Anything. I'm on a little bit of a time crunch today. I'm sorry we got started a little bit late from what I promised on Twitter. I should never make promises on social media. I always end up having my schedule go different than I anticipated. I promised this stream like an hour earlier. So yes, but we'll try and do a Q&A as well. Alrighty, so story number 1. Hold on, here we go. Boop. Okay, these poor kids. I hope things are okay for them. All right, so we have a new Harry Potter trio. And I've compared the photos here. I have a giant photo of them so you can see them really well. But the photo over there below is the original photo when they introduced the cast for the films at this point many, many years ago. So these are the 2 introductory photos. Let's talk about it. So new cast versus original cast. I think obviously Hermione stands out for a couple of reasons. I think she has the most personality of the group. I think she seems the most likable to me. And also, of course, they have, well, it's debatable whether or not they've changed the ethnicity of the character. We're going to talk about that. But I think she's something new. Whereas, very much so, you know, I think it's hard to beat the original cast members. Over the holidays, I rewatch the Harry Potter movies, as I know many of you do, every year. It's an incredible experience, and I think that I enjoyed the films much more than when I originally saw them in theaters. It makes really for a fantastic binge. And I was particularly impressed with how good the original cast was, from top to bottom. And I feel very bad for especially Harry and Ron, who are going to have to be in the shadow of Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint. I think it would be very, very difficult to top those performances. I still continue to feel it was a mistake not to tell a new group of characters and to tell like some new students and what it was like, what it's like for them to go through Hogwarts. But yeah, so I gotta tell you, I'm really not feeling Harry. I actually don't like the casting of Harry, but I have not. I mean, first of all, it's a child, so I don't want to be too negative. And then I haven't seen anything from him, so I don't know what he can act like or anything like that. I guess what I don't like about the Harry Potter actor is that he has like an edgier, harder look to him. And I don't know, let's just see. For me, he's the one where I'm like, you should have kept looking. But then, of course, this is just one photo. So it's interesting. When they first introduced the original cast members back in the day, they did a press conference. And they answered questions, and you got to see a little of their personality right away. And as you can see, they stuck glasses on Daniel Radcliffe. They were like, look, it's Harry. Maybe they should have stuck glasses on this kid. But yeah, so I I mean, I told you, I think, it's interesting to me that I think the actress who's playing Hermione has a little bit of she feels like she has a little bit of a Jenna Ortega vibe to me. And I wonder if that maybe influenced some of the casting. Because, of course, Jenna Ortega is extremely popular right now. You guys really want a poll? Okay, let's do a poll. We'll make it as nice as possible because these are kids. What is your first impression of this casting? Perfect. Then not bad. I think I might like it. We'll do that one. That's pretty positive. Then not feeling it. And then the last one is not for me. A polite not for me. All right, so anybody, by the way, who's watching, only members can join the chat, but anyone who's watching can vote in the poll. You just have to click on the box, and you'll be able to cast your vote. All right, so let's talk about, while people vote, let's talk about changes to Hermione. Sure enough, Hermione was the one who trended. I mean, they're all kind of there, but Hermione was the top one. Zeb Wells trended as well for the Batman comic, and we'll be talking about him. But I feel, I just hope that Warner Brothers does a better job protecting their actors than Disney has. I'm just a little nervous. It's interesting, Poke, that you say it's giving Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson, I think, did okay. It's certainly one of the best performing Disney Plus series in terms of ratings, but I don't think it ever really captured the internet's attention. I think the last season trended occasionally, but, I personally don't feel Percy Jackson, while I think it has certainly performed for Disney, I do not think that Percy Jackson reached the heights that it could have. I don't think Percy Jackson is performing at the optimal level that it should be able to, considering the brand that it is. Although Just Blaze Disney says that all the Percy Jackson fans are over on TikTok. Okay, well, all right, so that's certainly to be fair, and we'll see how it works. So as for the changes to the casting, people have long argued that Hermione was always supposed to be not white, if you really take a look at the description of the character in the books. And that actually has already been reflected in the excellent Broadway. Well, first it was on the West End, and then it came to Broadway, The Cursed Child, with Noma Dumezweni, who I actually saw. I saw her on Broadway when I went to see the show, and it made me an incredibly big fan of hers. I really loved her performances over the years. And because she appeared in the Broadway show, she became a working actor in Hollywood. She's on Murderbot right now, where she does a great job. She was in the remake of Presumed Innocent, the TV series on Apple TV. And I think she's just really a delightful actress, and I was thrilled that not only to see her in the original and The Cursed Child on the Broadway, the theater show, but that it elevated her career, and I've seen her so many places ever since. So that this has already kind of been established, and also I want to point out that the Broadway or the theatrical version has done extremely well. It was a huge hit on the West End, and it's still playing to this day, in fact, I believe, here on Broadway. So it's a very, 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 it did not hurt The Cursed Child. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Lisa, I don't think they did The Cursed Child because I think they couldn't get back the original trio. And so I think that's why they didn't want to do it. This was Hermione, Harry, and Ron all grown up on the Broadway show, and I don't think you could do that if you didn't have if you didn't have the original actors for the movie. So yes, this has already been established. It's already been discussed, and it seemed to go fine. And again, I think it's all about performance. I think that's very key, and I think this actress looks fantastic. I think she just really pops, and she totally steals focus, in fact, from the other two actors, in my opinion. All right, so let's talk about the next subject line. Online discourse. Let's go back to trending. Online discourse. I think we're all concerned. J.K. Rowling, of course, has really turned up the heat on the online discourse because she herself has become a troll, like the mythical characters from her own books. I did think that thing about mold on her walls was kind of like funny and weird, right? From some photos she had posted. But J.K. Rowling has really, I know that she believes she's working for a cause and fighting for certain individuals. And I think there's certainly nothing wrong with fighting for people. I think what people take issue with is her fighting so aggressively against some people. I think there's certainly a way to advocate for women without villainizing and going after the trans community, which is what J.K. Rowling has done. That's what she's decided to use her platform for. And so far, for the most part, I don't believe it's affected the Harry Potter property. I think she certainly damaged her own brand, but I don't think that it's going to hurt her personally. I mean, hurt the Harry Potter brand. All right, hold on. I think most people won't disengage from Harry Potter, as we saw the video game was a huge seller. But I think I'll be curious to see how much of a I'll be interested to see how present she is in this show. Like, will they include her in behind-the-scenes vignettes? Will she be I'm sure she'd be at the premiere potentially, but I think there's a very strong chance that J.K. Rowling might step back from this show. She certainly hasn't talked about it very much. And while she certainly likes to be out in the public spotlight, she also likes money. And she has a profit participation in this show. And I think she probably will, if I were advising her, I'd say you can't have your cake and eat it too, J.K. If you want to continue to advocate for the things that you do in the way that you do, I think you need to step back from the show and just, let it be. I'm sure she's promoting it. I mean, I'm sure Warner Brothers wants her to promote it. She still, to this day, has a very large following on all of her platforms, and that's eyeballs for this show. And so I'm sure that they want her to do that. Let me close this poll. What is your first impression of the casting? 53% of you think you might like it. 18% are not feeling it, and 14% feel it's not for you. So negative, and then perfect is only 13%. I think that's understandable considering we don't really get to interact with them at all. I would say, I'm not sure if they're British, Marco. I don't think that was specified. Their backgrounds weren't really specified. I would hope that they're British. I think so far almost everybody has been British except for John Lithgow, who is he's British like Dorit is British, which I find hilarious. The positive is almost 70% positive. So basically 70% positive, 30% negative. That's excellent. I feel very good about that if I were Warner Brothers. All right, so then the other thing that I want to point out is that unlike some other things that have gone on in the fandoms, these are kids. I'll leave JK up there for a moment because I want to speak on that. Pi says these are British kids. Fantastic. All right, so these are kids. I hope people keep that in mind with the discourse for the show. I think you got to be really careful. I hope people are very careful in their criticisms and commentary because, it's just evil to say horrible things about anyone. Really, you shouldn't be bullying anybody. You just don't engage. I didn't care for The Last of Us and I didn't hate watch it every week. I was just like, not for me. So I think that you should, if you're going to criticize or comment anything, you should be focusing on Warner Brothers and the people who make the show. Yes, executives and writers and directors and the showrunner. That's who you should be talking to. Hopefully these kids aren't on social media, at least not publicly. Maybe maybe let them have burner accounts. But yeah, that's right. Ika Torini points out that Jake Lloyd was bullied horribly for Star Wars, and it would be absolutely horrible if that were to happen. And then also, as far as them being kids, I hope that J.K. Rowling does not try to pull them into her discourse and the cause that I hope that J.K. Rowling herself advocates for these kids. These kids should be totally left out of all discussion except beyond how do you feel about the show. I think that, if they want to speak out on it themselves, then of course that would be wonderful. But I think that I don't think it's appropriate to ask children to take any kind of position on any subjects unless, they volunteer. I think let these kids just focus on playing these characters. And so I'm nervous as to how it's going to go. And I certainly wouldn't ask them to take a picture with J.K. Rowling. I don't know. How do you not? But at the same time, oh, my screen's a little dirty. It's distracting me. At the same time, I'd be like, I don't know if we really need to do that. So I am concerned about the fact that they're kids. Although I gotta tell you, these kids all look pretty professional. These other kids looked very new to acting, and they were for the most part. Although Daniel Radcliffe comes from a Hollywood or a British entertainment family, but these kids all seemed very fresh. Whereas I feel these kids feel very much like it's not their first rodeo when it comes to acting and entertainment. I bet they have more experience. So I think that's interesting. I'm curious. Yeah. Marco, you're right. Maybe that's why I don't like new Harry. He looks very much like a theater kid. And all due respect to theater kids, they grow up to be some wonderful performers and individuals. But everybody who's ever gone to school with a theater kid knows what it's like to interact with them. So he seems very much like maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. Where I'm like, oh my gosh. So let's see. I remember I went to film school, and the theater department was, the acting division was very difficult for us to interact with. Because, they had not at all realistic expectations on how the business works. And so everybody in the film division, it was just, I think maybe like the acting division was too optimistic, and I think those of us in the film division were too pessimistic. So we really clashed a whole lot. It was very funny. Adam Sphere is picking up what I'm dropping. I love it. So we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is, will anyone watch it? I don't know. I talked to Harry Potter. I'll do a poll. I know that you guys like to do polls. Okay. Will you watch HBO's Harry Potter series? Night it airs, baby. Then week of release. Then might binge. And then the final one will be no thank you. All right, and again, anyone who's watching can vote in a poll. You don't have to be a member to vote in a poll. So, I'll cover it. I'll break this show down for sure. I don't know how long it's going to last. We'll talk about Fantastic Beasts in a minute. But I do feel that I know that it's risky it would be risky to tell a new story. But I feel that it's less risky after the Hogwarts Legacy video game was so successful. I think that proved that you could tell a new story and people would be interested. I do think that it's nice to be able to revisit the material in depth. A lot of people swear that there's many things that were left out of the movies. I never read the books because they were too detailed. I told you, I was like, J.K. Rowling, when I tried to read the book, would take like 2 pages to describe a tree, and I was like, I can't do it. So maybe there'll be interesting things and nuances that they weren't able to convey in the movies. But I have to tell you, I just rewatched the movies, and I feel they're perfect, and I really feel no desire to... I do feel this is a mistake. I feel like they really should have told a new story. If these were new kids that we didn't know and we were excited to learn about them, I feel that it would have been... I think that would have ultimately worked out better. So we'll see who decides to watch. I think people will certainly watch the first episode. I think it also depends on how different it is. If it feels very different, then maybe people will watch it. But if people are like, this is just the original movie, just with like longer, then I think they're going to have a problem. I mean, they've put very good people on this. So I think there's a chance it might be good, but I'm curious to see if people actually are tuning in. I hope it doesn't feel like it skews too young, but they have cast really amazing older actors, and that's the key to getting adults to want to watch this. Then I have to mention, of course, that they promised a long time ago that, and also, before I say that, I do want to add, a lot of people are very upset about J.K. Rowling. A number of people are very upset about her. I've spoken to a number of people that I know, and some of them just will not support Harry Potter anymore because they feel that it's a betrayal to those that they know in the trans community. So I think that, they have to be very careful as to how they promote this and how involved J.K. Rowling feels. J.K. Rowling, I don't believe, had anything to do with the video game, promotion-wise. I don't think she talks about that at all. And I think because she hasn't been part of that discourse, I think maybe that's one of the reasons that the video game did so well. Some people said that by even my covering this, that they felt that, I knocked something over, sorry. That even by covering it, that was bad. And I feel that I'm not going to not cover I'm not going to not cover Harry Potter announcements and product, but I will promise you that I will always bring up the J.K. Rowling situation. And be very honest about it. And so I think that's what I feel comfortable doing, to try and still deliver the type of content that I want to, but also to still be, a friend to the LGBTQ community and to be honest about it. So that's how I'm doing it. All right, so let me close the poll on this, then we'll go to the last thing here. Hey, welcome back, Olawatobi. I remember your avatar. All right, so Harry Potter, will you be watching? 31% of you say no, thank you. That's very big. 27% of you will watch it the night it airs. 22% of you might wait to binge, depending on how it goes. And then 17% of you will watch week of. It's not going to be like an appointment viewing for you, but you will watch it week to week. That means week to week, you've got about a little under 50%. All right, so let's see how the trailers look. Let's see how the trailers look and stuff like that. I think that's not ideal, to be honest with you, but it's not horrible. I do feel if it was a new story, more of you would be watching, and I think it was ultimately a mistake. I mean, I've gone back and forth on it myself when I see how much money it's going to cost to do this series. But as the more and more we go along, I'm like, we really need to get off this train before it's too late. And I feel like I think it's all right. Once you cast these three, the train has left the station for Hogwarts. The Hogwarts Express, toot toot, we're going whether you like it or not. And we'll see how it goes. Now, one thing I do want to point out, though, is that the Fantastic Beasts 5 movie promise. Back in the day, they said they were going to make 5 Fantastic Beasts movies. They promised them, and they only got to 3. I got to tell you, that's because I think some people like Newt Scamander. That's interesting to me. But I think that the Dumbledore Grindlewald story was very interesting to me and should have been what the movies were about. Now, obviously, they had to make that the secondary storyline because, Warner Brothers was nervous about having an LGBT, or in this case, a gay romance front and center. However, I think it's interesting that clearly that was the part of the movie franchise that everybody was the most interested in because it slowly moved to the foreground. Well, this way. It slowly moved to the foreground as the films did progress. You can even see in the posters. Here they're like, what are you talking about? Then they're like, oh yeah, don't forget, Dumbledore and Grindelwald are here. And then they're like, Dumbledore, and that. And I think that was, it was very, I really thought it was actually, I thought what Jude Law accomplished here was really wonderful. I really loved his character. I thought he was fantastic. I thought the sadness of him having to walk away from when there was that wedding at the end of The Secrets of Dumbledore. Oh, I never occurred to me. I don't know if J.K. Rowling if she even meant it that way, if she's has that level of compassion for the LGBTQ community, considering how she treats the T part of it. But, Dumbledore, of course, the secret of who he loves and who he is. It was really very moving. It was really very strong. I really liked it. And I particularly was interested in that storyline. And so I'm actually somewhat sad I'll never get to see it resolve. Oh, well. But yeah, I think that Warner Brothers should not promise. Nobody should ever promise that they're going to. Look at me. I promised I was going to go live at 2 o'clock. I couldn't do it. Don't promise things, just hold off and just wait and see, And that's the problem with saying you're going to retell the Harry Potter original story. That means you got to do all of them or it's going to be seen as a failure. If you told an original story, you'd be like, well, what do you know? The original story we told is done. Now to tell a new one. You don't know how long we were going to tell it. We only planned to tell it for 1 year. It could have been a different, it could have been an ongoing series for years if every year you had a new class enter. Wouldn't that be clever? If every year new freshmen entered and you'd be like, who are the freshmen this year? Oh, and then people would keep getting older and older and they'd eventually age out and maybe you could have an adult series beyond Hogwarts. It's too late though. This is done. Oh, what a mess. They could have done that. Oh, is that what Degrassi did? I never watched Degrassi, but that's fantastic. Oh, that was Glee too? Oh, see, that's great. That's a good idea. I'm telling you, that's what they should have done. Mistake. All right, so we'll see what happens. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this before we move on to the second story of the day? These poor kids. Please, if you take away anything from our discussion, please don't be mean to these kids. You can be mean to any adult you want. I wouldn't be too mean to them, but please don't be mean to these kids. Let's see. CM says there are so many places to explore in this universe. So dumb to waste it. I would agree. Sophia says, promote the UK theme park. Yeah, they are building a theme park in the UK. That's very exciting. I think they can't do that there, though. I think that's because they have this. I think actually they can't do Harry Potter because of the Warner Brothers stuff. Paul says book 5 is 800 pages, and it's the shortest of the films. Entire plot points are left out, so there's lots to cover. But I don't know if anybody's going to care about that, Paul. I feel so bad. I'm sure some hardcore Harry Potter fans will. I don't know. It depends on how interested I am, or like those of us who haven't read the books are in the new material. If we're like, this changes everything, well then fine. But I think until then you're like, I don't know, man. I already know where this is going to go. Mika says, what are the comps for this? House of the Dragon? I don't think there is a comp because I don't think they've done a retelling of anything that's this big. They've done new versions, like they always have like a new Batman or a new Superman over the years or a new James Bond, but they've never retold the exact same story. Something that lasted this long and this big. Marco says, these kids seem okay. I like it. You kids seem okay. H is very excited. Brian says, if HBO sends us over to Netflix like they have done some of their other content, this could be really a big deal. This could be HBO's new Game of Thrones. I don't know. I've got to tell you, Wanda's attorney says it seems very Percy Jackson. I feel it's going to be HBO's new Percy Jackson. I sure hope not, because Percy Jackson, at least for me, drives no traffic whatsoever. And I'd like this to be another thing for me to be able to cover. Sherm said movie 5 was so bad. I liked all the movies. I forget which one was the weakest, but I really liked all of them. George says, who is the most in charge, JK or Warner Brothers? Warner Brothers is. I think JK has veto power, but Warner Brothers is the one making this. Hey, Rainbow Nomad, welcome back. And then Paul is also the most nervous about Harry. I don't want to pit the kids against each other, though. I was like, should I do a poll over which kid we like the best? No. I got to follow my own advice. Keneal says, I think the tone of the series will be crucial. I loved how dark and edgy the films were. Me too. It better be dark and edgy. That's what HBO and Warner Brothers are supposed to deliver. If I want happy, I'll go over to Disney. Trey says, no promises a realistic approach in the era of earnings calls and share performance? That's a good question, Trace. I think it is because the franchise will continue. You don't have to promise in what context it will continue, but Harry Potter will always be a deliverable. Because it's so bad when you promise 7 years of a show and maybe you'd only get, what if they only get 1 year of the show? They shouldn't have promised another season of The Last of Us. I think The Last of Us is going to go down as one of the great embarrassments in television history. And I think they never should have promised a third season. I'd be like, let's see how season 2 goes. And I think by promising a season 3, they hurt season 2 because they didn't force the people who made the show to put their best foot forward for 2. They were like, oh, don't worry, we've got them for 2 seasons. And I'm like, do you? Do you? I think you don't. DPW says, what about a Harry Potter animated series? Oh, I like that idea. I like that idea a lot, but that would be a side thing, I feel. Okay. Nico, I don't know about the theme parks, we'll see what they do. I mean, they just opened the new Epic Universe. Gamer J wants to point out that Francesca Gardner is the showrunner and therefore it's the most powerful. I mean, she has a lot of power, but don't think that for a minute that J.K. Rowling and the executives can't veto anything that she does, Although you never know. Disney has let a lot of people hurt their IP and hasn't overruled them. I've heard discussions that showrunners have tremendous power. I feel too much power. I told you before that showrunners are able to hire whoever they want for the writing staff, and the studio is not supposed to interfere. I remember hearing for a recent show that turned out great, so it doesn't matter. But for a recent show that was coming out, there was supposed to be this really great writer on it, but then they got cut because the showrunner decided to go with somebody else, and I was shocked that they did that. But then again, it turned out great, so it doesn't matter. Atomsphere, they have not discussed when it will come out. But obviously they're gearing up to start filming if they're this far along in the casting. Okay, let's go to the next story. I'm not telling you what show it is. You're going to get me in trouble. Okay. Story number 2. This is a fun one. Story number 2. Boop. A DC Marvel crossover, baby. Some of you don't understand what a big deal this is. Marvel and DC rarely cross over. Rarely. I think they've crossed over once really only once or twice in the history of their existence. Thank you, Jacob Knight. I did talk about this in my recent video. I said that Ryan Reynolds should do a crossover, and I didn't speak it into existence because they had already, but I didn't know it was going to be Deadpool. I guess I just guessed on that. I lucked out. But they had announced they were doing comic book DC Marvel crossovers about a month or so ago. And so that's one of the reasons I mentioned it here. Now, fans have long wanted a DC Marvel crossover in any context that they could get it. For instance, whenever Injustice, which is a DC video game, is announcing players and new characters, fans are always like, Marvel character? And Ed Boon has to always be like, I'd love to, but I don't have the rights. It's very difficult to get them. But maybe if this is very successful, look, Marvel and DC are both having trouble. So I think that you're going to get to a point. And now they're run by people with very little integrity. They're run by people just looking to make a buck. And so they're going to the brands are both dying on the vine. So you're going to have Marvel and DC very soon being like, how can we get people interested in this stuff again? And so this might be very much the way that they're doing it. I think the comics are having a lot of trouble because they're bad right now. DC comics are a little bit better than Marvel right now, but both are nowhere near as good as they were, like, say, 5 or 10 years ago. So I think that this comic book idea is to get more people into comics. So I always wonder if this is going to be doing a movie crossover. Are they planting the seeds for a movie crossover down the line? I do wonder if they are, and I certainly think they'll be looking. I think these things all have an influence, just like Marvel Rivals, I feel, has an influence. And I'll be certainly reviewing this comic when it comes out in September. The first one comes out mid-September. So as I said, if I were Ryan Reynolds, I'd be grabbing this thing like crazy. I wonder who his Batman would be. Would it be Robert Pattinson? I think they're a ridiculous match. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm sure Ryan Reynolds is delighted that Deadpool was the character from Marvel chosen for this. And I think that, I said there are very few people who I feel could push this through in the live action space. And I feel that Ryan Reynolds, well, he was one. I don't know for sure how much damage the Justin Baldoni situation has done to him. I feel it's significant within the general public. I don't know how much it's hurt him within the industry. I've heard a little bit. at the very least, to be honest with you. That's all I want to say. Ryan Reynolds, I think he's been really great. I don't want to say anything bad about Ryan Reynolds at this juncture. Okay, so 2025, there will be actually 2 Marvel DC crossovers. The first is this year. The second will be in early 2026. Those characters have not been announced. We'll talk about them in a moment. But this is going to be Batman and Deadpool. We'll look at the covers a little bit bigger in just a moment. This is going to be Batman and Deadpool. Are they a good match? Well, as you can see, I think they're an awful match. But Joker is going to be involved. So that, to me, is very interesting. Joker, I think, is an interesting person to involve in this. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea. But Joker is... So, you're going to see Deadpool-Joker interaction. I don't know what Batman and Deadpool would even say to each other, to be honest with you. Batman is a man of few words and little patience. Wolverine at least was willing to work it out. I think he's just an absolutely horrible. I think it's not a great pairing, but I'll be curious to see what they do with it. Now, as for the second pairing in 2026, as some of you are saying, Harley Quinn. If they picked Deadpool for the first one, I wouldn't be surprised if they picked Harley Quinn and maybe a more serious Marvel character for the next one. I agree, Pi, it should have been Harley Quinn and Deadpool. I think that would have been great. But I think, I don't know how many, like hardcore guys would have bought Harley Quinn versus Deadpool. I mean, we'll see. I personally think Batman should have teamed up with somebody like Cyclops or something like that. Or Wolverine. I thought for sure it would be Batman and Wolverine. They could have a grunt off. That'd be great. But I guess maybe that's a little bit too obvious. But I really hope that if it's not, I don't know if it will be 2 women, but I would like to see 1 female character in the second team up. If it's 2 guys again, I'm going to be kind of upset. I think it'll be interesting to see if that's who. It'll be very interesting. And also, you're right, Marco, how about some diversity as well? These are 2 white dudes. Although there's some discussion as to, Deadpool's sexuality, which I think they've, Ryan Reynolds, I think, has pushed that as far as he can in the live action space. But yeah. Wonder Woman and Storm. Oh, X-Men superfan. I like that choice a lot. I like Wonder Woman and Storm a lot. That's a great idea. That's a really good idea. I would love that. So yeah. Oh, Trisha, you and your daughter are going to see Lilo and Stitch. Have a great time. That's great. Hooray. All right. I'm glad you guys said hi, and I'm glad to keep you company on your way to the movies. So yes, I would like it to be at least 1 female character. Another Wanda stan says, what about Storm and Poison Ivy, as they're both Mother Nature related? I like that. I don't know if it would sell as well, though. I would buy the heck out of it. I got to tell you, if you're even a moderate comic book fan, you're buying these comics. It's just that big of a deal. This is like the death of Superman, when that comic came out. It's that big of a deal. It's a really, really big deal. These are going to sell extremely well, even if they're crap. And let's talk about whether or not they're going to be any good. All right, so the first one is going to be DC, from DC Comics. There's the cover for it. That's the DC Comics cover. And this is from Grant Morrison and Dan Mora. Grant Morrison is going to be the writer. Dan Mora is going to be the artist. Dan Mora is so hot right now as an artist. He is drawing everything over at DC. I'm a big fan of his artwork. He's just an incredibly talented artist. That's right, Sophia. He is the GOAT. He's just really, really strong as an artist. I think he's probably maybe the strongest artist working today. He's so good they put him on World's Finest and Justice League. Although sometimes he's not always drawing World's Finest right now because he's so busy. He can only draw 1 face though, but he's so good at it, nobody cares. You're like, it's like the old comics. You can only tell who somebody is by their hair and outfit. So it's interesting because these 2 individuals have actually worked together before on a comic called Klaus, which was the history of Santa Claus. Although it's a comic book, so it was a lot more gritty and violent than other Santa Claus origin stories. Now, I like Grant Morrison a lot, although I have some questions about how he's going to write Deadpool. Grant Morrison, of course, is one of the greatest comic book writers of all time. Oh, happy birthday, Drago. Oh, your daughter Trisha. Let's see. I'm sorry. Trisha's daughter is in her Stitch pajamas for the movie. I love it. When I was little, I went to the movies in my pajamas once or twice. That's awesome. I'm sure your daughter. Well, Trisha, I don't know your daughter's name, but hey, I'm sure you look fabulous. Okay, so I don't know if Grant Morrison can write Deadpool. I'm really nervous about it, to be honest with you. And then also, I don't know if any of you recall what Grant Morrison did to Joker, but it would certainly give Deadpool something to make fun of. It was just nuts. You were like, dude, what did you do to that character? Grant Morrison hasn't been working so much lately, but again, I believe that somebody just pointed out, Sophia, that Grant Morrison's pronouns are they, them. I was not aware of that. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. So Morrison, their track record is incredible, and just the very fact that they're writing this comic, it just makes it an instant classic. This is the kind of team that, I got the press release for this crossover from DC. I don't get Marvel Comics press releases, because I'm not in the comic book space as much as I used to be. So I wasn't aware of the Marvel comic, but that's the one that trended. So let's talk about that, because that went in a very different direction. All right, so there's going to be, as I said, 2 issues. So the second one is going to come out probably a week or a month later. They didn't specify. Here's this cover. This was an Entertainment Weekly exclusive. And this is drawn by Greg Capulo, this guy is also very, very well known. He became very successful by doing Scott Snyder's Batman series. So he has a lot of experience drawing Batman and the Joker. He's a very, very successful artist as well. But then for some reason they paired him up. Well, I know why they did it, but they paired him up with Zeb Wells. And the internet got very upset. Let me give you the trending thing again that we looked at earlier. And you can see that Zeb Wells is trending at number 5 because everybody's very upset that Zeb Wells got this gig for a number of reasons. And let's go over them. I'm actually shocked to see Greg Capulo partnered up with Zeb Wells. It's like one of these things, when you look at the talent here, where's the Grant Morrison and Dan Mora? When you look at this talent, you're like, one of these things does not belong, and it's this guy right here. So the reason he's here, though, is because, well, we're talking about Zeb Wells now, so let me put the arrow in the right place. Zeb Wells, Zeb Wells is only writing one of the 2 issues, so at least one of them is going to be a banger. So anyway, Zeb Wells is a credited writer on Deadpool and Wolverine the movie. He's in fact the only comic book writer with a credit, and that's how he got the gig. Because people in Hollywood, they don't actually do a lot of research when they're hiring someone. Now, I believe that the people over at Marvel looked and said, well, hey, Zeb Wells worked on the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. And that made over $1 billion and was very successful. There he is at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere. Now, did anybody involved bother to pick up? I guess, they hired Zeb Wells, and they still hire Zeb Wells to write comics over there, even though the internet has for quite some time made it very clear that they hate this guy. Not only because they feel he has absolutely no talent, and I would agree with that. I would never buy a Zeb Wells comic unless I really liked the character. And that's how these people keep working. You're like, that guy's a hack. Oh, but I do love Harley Quinn. I guess I'll read this stupid comic, or at least the first couple of them. All right, so yes, as Eric pointed out, Zeb Wells particularly did a number on Spider-Man. In fact, a number of people felt that he was just working through his divorce drama. Let's get poor Greg Capulo out of here. Greg Capulo's like, why am I in here? But a lot of people felt that Zeb Wells, who was getting divorced at the time, really just carried out his emotional situation in the Spider-Man comic instead of writing a good story for everybody. Now, who was he married to? Who did he divorce? He divorced Heidi Gardner from Saturday Night Live. They were married for a long time, and they're the ones who got divorced. And I have to say, there are rumblings that Zeb Wells, not a great guy. I don't think it's proven. I don't think he's actually been canceled. But if anybody's circling the drain on getting canceled, it's Zeb Wells. And so I think that a lot of people, I wouldn't be surprised if a number of people just bought the DC comic and didn't even buy this follow-up. I mean, I guess it's the end of the story, but it's really a problem for this. It's like everything about this Batman Deadpool crossover is perfect, except for the fact that now Zeb Wells is in it. Everybody's like, ooh. And I think that's why Zeb Wells is trending, because everybody just wants to have a good time, and they're one Zeb Wells away from being able to do that. I have to tell you, the comic book industry is extremely connections-based. I think that's one of the problems with the comic book industry. When you are in any other industry, there are agents and talent scouts and managers, and, that's how they find talent. And they're actively looking for new talent, and that's the way it's supposed to be run. The comic book business, for a very long time, to this day, is run by who you know. Very often people who get a break in the comic book industry get a break because they're friends with someone who currently works in it. I've told you, if you want to write comic books, you need to go to comic book conventions and befriend the editors, because that's the only way they're going to hire you. They're not actively looking for new talent in a professional way. I was able to break in. I'm very fortunate, although I feel there's even less ways to do that now. I broke in by writing manga for video games, actually, for Warcraft and StarCraft. And I did some Muppets work as well through Tokyo Pop, which went out of business. And I also worked for Boom Studios. And that's how I got my way in. But one of the problems is that's why there's so much, I think that's why you've seen a lot of abuse in the comic book industry, because it's not professional in the way that it's run. There's not professional talent scouting. There's not professional interactions. That's why you have an agent and manager to protect you in your interactions with your employer. And that's not something that happens in the comic book industry, in fact. People just talked about the passing away of Peter David over the weekend. And it was really, really sad, because he's also a comic book writing legend, but it was also infuriating, because I had donated to his GoFundMe for his medical expenses. And people were talking about the fact that comic book companies and the studios now make billions of dollars off of these characters who are only great because of the people who wrote them and in some cases created them. And Peter David certainly has contributed to the success of Marvel and DC characters over the years, and people falling in love with those characters. And the fact that he had no health insurance, that he had no retirements really, because of the way comic book contracts are done. And that's because when you sign a comic book contract, there's nobody to negotiate it for you. You rarely even have a lawyer. And as Jimmy Palmiotti pointed out, he did a tweet about this actually, page rates, you get paid by the page these days. And you've always gotten paid by the page. Unless you're a big name like Scott Snyder, and I'm sorry to say, Zeb Wells, you're getting paid very little. It's really not something that you can make money off of, actually, in fact. Madav says, are there unions? There are no unions in the comic book business. There should be, at the very least. Mr. Andrews, I did not have a lawyer at the time that I signed my comic book contracts, because I was just so happy to get them. And that's how it happens. I told you that, who is the guy who wrote like a sci-fi series? JB something? I forget his name. Strakowski. He doesn't work as much anymore. But when Grant Morrison was complaining about the deals that he signed for Watchmen, that guy pointed out that you always sign the best contract that you can at the time that you sign it. And that's very true. You're not going to be able to, you have very little negotiating power when you start out in your career. And that's where J. Michael Straczynski, thank you, Resident Justice. That's where Alan Moore was when he did Watchmen. He didn't have the negotiating power that he did later on in his career. And so you can't negotiate a contract as much when you're starting out. Again, as I told you, you're just so happy to have gotten the gig. And so that's how it is. But there are a lot of people who unfortunately never get to a level where they can negotiate aggressively. I don't want to talk about real people, because some of them I actually know from my comic book days. But I think there are people whose name you know who I bet you do not have negotiating power, even though you know who they are. I think that the number of people who have the ability to negotiate a contract in the comic book industry, you could count on two hands. And I'm saying writers and artists. That's it. And there are certainly a heck of a lot more people working there. This conversation took a turn. All right, I'm really going over on my time here. Okay, so what is that? Anybody have any questions or comments about this? Sophia says that Dan Mora and Grant Morrison are two of them. I think Grant Morrison has the most negotiating power. Dan Mora probably has some, but I bet you less than you would expect. Because there's always another great artist out there somewhere. Whelm says, I feel Deadpool versus Batman is boring. This is coming from a Batman fan. I have a weird suggestion that I feel a strong writer like Grant Morrison would really enjoy something more like Deadpool and the Question. Well, yes. I mean, obviously they picked these two characters from a sales perspective and not from what would make the most interesting story. And, I understand that. I don't think Deadpool versus the Question would sell nearly as well, even if it would maybe be a better comic. Alberto, I'm glad you found this discussion interesting about the industry. Mr. Andrews, there has been nothing leaked or revealed about the 2026 crossover, only that it's coming. DC Stranded says, based on comic book sales, if DC and Marvel are messed up, isn't the whole industry? Because there really isn't anything selling as good as Absolute or... Is the Ultimate comic selling well? I think Absolute's selling well. I haven't looked at the sales charts, though, lately, to be fair. I think Image is probably still doing pretty well. The whole comic book industry, I tell you, the whole comic book industry, except in the 90s, has not really ever been doing well. It is not, that's one of the reasons the page rates are so low. These characters are worth a lot of money because of the TV and movies and the merchandise. Even though I believe the comic books are the most important because none of those other things work without these people in the comics. The comics are the engine because they're the ones who create the new stories that then get adapted down the line. And I don't believe that anybody in any of these industries realizes that, in my opinion. Oh, I wonder if you guys would agree. I wonder if you would agree. I'll do a poll really quickly. I'm really running short on time. I don't even know if I can do a Q&A today. What is the most important for comic characters? Comics, movies and TV, and then we'll do both. Okay. By the way, again, anyone who's watching can vote in a poll. You don't have to be a member to vote in a poll. So, Joey, thanks for trying to give me some extra time. I appreciate it. Let's see here. B Power says if they could lower the price of comics, they could get more kids into the hobby. Well, then, they can't even pay these people anything now. I mean, I think I don't know. I do spend an awful lot of money on comic books. I'm able to do it as a tax write-off because it's research for my work. I got to know what Deadpool's doing now. I got to read this for work, baby. But they are expensive. Although I have to say, now they're not as good, so you buy less every week. All right, I'll do a short Q&A. You guys, I'm glad you like them so much. And then Steven says, I've seen artists talking about never getting extra money when the art they did or the character designs they made are used by Marvel and DC in video games. Isn't that horrible? Isn't that horrible not to get any profit participation? I'm not even saying it needs to be significant. If they even got a point, they would be getting an incredible amount of money. Uraj says that Zeb Wells destroyed Spider-Man with the character Paul. I didn't even read Zeb Wells' run. Read Joe Kelly's new run on Spider-Man. That's excellent. That would be instant death for the MCU if Paul is introduced. Now I need to know who Paul is. Adam Sphere says, speaking of comics, when does Saga get good? What? It gets good immediately. If you don't like it, I don't know what to say, Adam Sphere. That was amazing from page 1. Oh, look, Sophia also hates Paul. Who is this Paul? I must Google him. Is he everybody's Ned? I really hate Ned. Let's see here. Oh, Paul is Mary Jane's boyfriend after Peter. What the what? Let me Google Paul. Marvel Comics Paul. Paul Rabin? Does he look like Zeb Wells? Oh. This guy with a man bun? This guy? What's his last name? Why do they have a family? What's happening here? Is that Paul? That's Paul? Oh, he does look like a rebound boyfriend, but apparently not. This does not look like someone that comic book fans would enjoy. Here they are here. I don't know. I feel like they were trying to go, I don't know. Oh, look, Pi kind of likes Paul. That's hilarious. Well, I'll try and see what I think of Paul, but I got to tell you, I don't know. That's honestly my instant reaction when I saw Paul. I was like, okay, MJ, have your fun, work through some stuff. He just seems like the kind of ridiculous boyfriend that a lot of people grab when they're when they're like, I just need somebody, as in, I just need to move on. And so you don't make the best choice because you're just grabbing somebody. So that doesn't necessarily mean that person's bad for, I don't know. I don't want to be mean to Paul. I haven't met Paul. But yeah, that's how I would describe it. You know, you're like, don't get too attached to Paul, hopefully. Yeah, that's how I guess I would react if Paul was still there months later. I'd be like, why is Paul still here? You were supposed to be done with him by now. Let's see here. Connor says, I feel for Peter fans because it's been great over here for us Miles fans with Ziegler's run. Oh, is that good? I dropped the comic for, I didn't know that was good. Okay, I have not been liking Marvel comics, so I read mostly DC right now. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. All right, so let's get on to the next story because I'm running out of time here. All righty. Story number 3. Boom, baby. We have our, I always want to say Jocasta, but it's Jocasta. Jocasta has apparently been cast. Oh, I didn't close the poll. Hold on. All right, so 40% of you feel both are equally. Oh, your guys are almost entirely split in 3/3. 40% feel both. 31% feel movies and TV, and only 27% of you feel the comics are the driver. I gotta say, I mean, a vote's a vote, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, but you're wrong, because the comic books are what's crucial to giving new material. I mean, maybe someday, I mean, I don't know, we'll see. But I really do feel that it's important. Okay. Back to the story. Okay. I really don't think that I'm going to have time for a Q&A. I'm so sorry. I know you guys like them, but I just don't think that it's reasonable. Alrighty. Okay, so, by the way, I want to point out what a wonderful day for Black actresses. With the Hermione casting, and then also, Hermione also in The Cursed Child, but then also with Tania Miller getting this role. So I think that's really fantastic. I think, that's a group that, has been one of the least to get representation in this space in entertainment. And I think that it's just, it's very nice. And I hope that it goes well. Okay, so Tania Miller, now you might be familiar with this actress. She was also in The Haunting of Bly Manor and The House of Usher. She's a Mike Flanagan discovery to some degree, or he at least put her on the map. And she's going to be playing Jocasta in the Vision series. That's who she's rumored to be playing. Now, this character in the comics was designed to be Ultron's bride. Ultron was like, I want to get married. So he created himself, a little bit like the Bride of Frankenstein. And she also has had crazy hair, just like the Bride of Frankenstein does. She has this kind of like metal, halo of hair. And you can see that in the comics, they kind of gave her recently, you can see flesh, and she was a black character there. So so that's the other thing about comics. That now becomes canon, and so this casting is therefore comics accurate. By Adam Sphere. So, James Spader is going to be, he's already confirmed for this show. So James Spader will be there. And Jocasta, obviously, it looks like maybe Ultron's not done building robots just yet. Now, of course, he built Vision to originally be his own body. Perhaps he'll be fighting to take that over again. Maybe he wants the Vision body back. I think they're going to be basing it on the comics, but it seems very clear that they're coming up with something that's unique as a storyline. Just like they significantly changed the House of M storyline for WandaVision. Although people really like the showrunner, who comes from the world of Star Trek. He took over Picard towards the end of the show's run, and fans were very happy with that. And of course, there are a lot of robots / droids, etc. on Star Trek, and so he's going to take that experience and bring it over to the MCU. So I do wonder if maybe this will be a romantic interest potentially for Vision, right? Because of course, when you look, I think people are going to be thinking not only about Jocasta with Ultron, but of course, in the Tom King comic, he had a family. He created a wife and a son and a daughter, to have that perfect 1950s nuclear family. And so potentially, that might be how Jocasta comes into play. One of the things that Kevin Feige does do brilliantly is that he's just comics accurate enough to please the fans, but then he changes it so that it's interesting to the fans. And it gives us a chance to have a lot of discussions about how it's different. And I'm a big fan of that formula, and I think the MCU, that's when they're the most successful. Any comic book adaptation, in my opinion, is the most successful when they do that. Now, what's also interesting is if you look back at the Vision comic, they also had this great image about Vision's family tree. And I like that it's, they might be maybe exploring that to some degree. There's Vision. There's the family that he builds. He also builds himself a dog. There's Wanda and the children that she willed into existence for them, Wiccan and Speed. Who is this again? Oh, that's Wonder Man. That's right. So that's Wonder Man, because there's that love triangle. We're going to talk about that in a second. So there's Wonder Man. I think the is that the Grim Reaper? He spins out a Wonder Man. Wonder Man's brain pattern was what originally gave Vision his personality. So that created a love triangle here. But then here's Hank Pym, who is the father in the comics of Ultron. They didn't do that. It's Tony Stark. Of course it's Tony Stark in the MCU. Hank Pym started all this. And then, of course, that's Victor, who is Ultron's son. He's a what is it when you're half human, half robot, like a cyborg? He's a cyborg. And some of us have wondered, that's right, the Brady Bunch of Westview, Stephen. And Victor was a really great character from Runaways, which is an incredible comic book. So I wonder if they're going to talk about that, maybe. I kind of like that. I think that's very interesting. Now, of course, though, everybody's going to wonder what this means, particularly Wanda fans, for Wanda. Is Vision going to be flirting with somebody else? Do you not only create a love triangle, but do you potentially create, also in the comic, in the Tom King comic, they explored that the relationship with Wanda was not only over, but very difficult for Vision. And that being married to Wanda was no walk in the park. Which I don't know if is really fair to Wanda. I don't know. I hope that we don't have a situation wherever a guy tells Wanda's story, it's unfair to her. Because Jack Schaefer, I think, has been very fair to Wanda. And a lot of us are frustrated with sometimes the lack of fairness. Wanda can be dramatic, that's true. I have no problem addressing that. But I don't know. I thought the Vision comic is so well written and so well drawn, I was okay with it, with the way they handled Wanda. But I don't know how happy Wanda fans would be, to be honest with you. But here's what's really fascinating. Wonder Man is also coming on the scene. And interestingly, Marvel has cast black actors in both of these alternate love interest roles. So I think that's going to be also very interesting. I wonder if Jocasta will maybe be based on Wanda at all. when we talk about using brain patterns. Like, how will that work? Will Ultron see what Vision had with Wanda and try to recreate it himself? But then wouldn't the character be played by Elizabeth Olsen? I don't know. But I think you really have a love square that they're building here. And I'm very curious to see what they decide to do here. I mean, they might have it that Wonder Man has nothing to do with Wanda, but that would be dumb. And there would be no reason to do Wonder Man if you weren't connecting him to Wanda, in my opinion. Let's see the show. Stephen Turner says they currently have a Wanda and Vision miniseries comic. That's right, I purchased it. I haven't read it yet. I've been very busy the past week, so I have not gotten a chance to read it. But I did buy it because I liked the cover, which is so often, and I like the characters. Steve Orlando's writing it, and as I said the other day, he's an awful writer, and for some reason he continues to work. Okay, does anybody have questions or comments about this? I'm afraid I cannot do a Q&A today. I am over time, but I can answer questions or comments about this, and then we will have a live stream tomorrow where I will be able to do a Q&A. Chris says the show needs a mystery to succeed. I'm sure the mystery might be who is Jocasta. Fernando says, I'm excited for these shows, but at this point, will they tie into the rest of the MCU? I think that they're really going to be starting. I wouldn't mind if Disney Plus really aggressively built out the WandaVerse. That would be wonderful. Mandela Butterfly says, what is the timeline of this show? We've got no information yet as to what's going on here. We only know who the cast is, and therefore we're able to kind of make some educated guesses based on the comic book history. I'm not sure when it's coming out, Sophia, but they have not even begun to film yet. And Wanda's attorney, Tommy, definitely is confirmed to be coming now, but we have no idea when and where. Official Liam says, will Vision appear since she is also a person of color and usually drawn dark skin? Oh, I wasn't aware. I've only seen her in her android form. I love Viv. I would love for Viv to be introduced to the MCU. She's a wonderful character. Mika, it better not be more half-hour episodes. I hope Disney's done with that. Wonder Man's already filmed. Wonder Man comes out at the end of the year, supposedly. A-Rod Ultron, I'm sure he uploaded himself somewhere. I'll be curious to see what his new body looks like and if James Spader will actually be on screen. I suspect he will be. I think that's how they got him back. Oh, Wanda's attorney. You believe they've already started to film Vision? That would be wonderful. That would make me very happy. And John Thrasher says, don't expect Vision Quest until 2027. Isn't that nuts? That's so far away. I mean, we waited for Agatha, though, and it was worth the wait. I have a feeling that Vision Quest will be as good as Agatha, based on what I've heard about this showrunner that they selected. Ben 10, I believe they changed the name of Vision Quest. I wish they wouldn't. I like the name Vision Quest. I think that's a good name. Faye, we didn't deduce that he was Tommy, as in fact, when I went over his casting, I said there were a number of people that he could be. I think there's a lot of choices for who he could be. I don't think he's necessarily Tommy. I believe the Vision show will be Android focused. Yes, Fernando, Vision was in the Doomsday concept as somebody who was helping with the Young Avengers, which makes sense because, of course, he was in the comics. Although they added Star-Lord to the mix, and I actually don't think that's a good use of Star-Lord's time. I don't think he's good for the Young Avengers. All right, I must go. I love talking to you guys so much. Thank you, all of you who joined me for today's live stream, member or not. If you can't be a member right now, I totally understand, but I hope you'll consider hitting like and subscribe, so you'll always know when I'm going live. You get a 30-minute, if you hit subscribe and notifications, you will get a 30-minute heads up whenever I'm going live. And so you'll always know when videos and stuff like that go up. All right, everybody, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.